Hello, everybody, and happy Thursday. Welcome into another edition of the GC Roundup here on GamecockCentral.com. I'm your host, Kendall Smith, and this week I am joined alongside of Michael Sauls, once again, my fabulous coworker at Gamecock Central. I know last week we kind of lied. We said it would just be a one-time thing that Michael would be on the show, but what we didn't realize at the time last week is that when we filmed the GC Roundup, it actually is on the same day as National Signing Day this week. So right now it is currently Wednesday, December 15th. Shane Beamer just had a press conference. We're doing this video kind of late in the evening. And then also, of course, National Signing Day is today as well. So we're just going to be kind of going through a roundup of Gamecock football. Usually the roundup talks about every single sport in South Carolina athletics, and it's going to stay that way for the next episode and beyond. But for this week, we're just going to talk all about Gamecock football because of National Signing Day and because of all of the news that came out today with bowl opt-outs and transfer portal news. We just need to break it all down and talk about it in a quick type of show so that way people can just kind of get the information they need to get and move right along. So Michael, before we get into all of that, how are you doing? I feel like I just talked a mile a minute. It has been such a long day. I've been on the road now for like 12 and a half hours. So I need to know, how has your National Signing Day been?
It's been good. Much more laid back in comparison to yours. I know you were out on the road, in Irmo and Chapin. I just kind of stayed back here and held down the fort just in case anything crazy happened. But just got back from the Beamer press conference, a solid hour-long press conference, a lot of information about all the signees that came in today. So good day other than that.
You say that you were holding down the fort in case anything crazy happened, and actually a lot of crazy things did happen. Wednesday, when people are viewing this video, it will be on Thursday. So yesterday, a lot of crazy things happened. And I want to just start off kind of talking about something that a lot of people probably aren't super pumped about, but we just kind of need to get it out of the way right here, right now at the start of the show. Barham, he was originally committed to play at South Carolina, actually committed over the weekend, and then flipped the switch earlier on Wednesday morning and decided to sign with Maryland. So Shane Beamer kind of talked about it during his press conference yesterday. Talk about what he said. I know he didn't mention Barham by name, but just kind of talk about how that series of events transpired from Barham going from South Carolina to Maryland in the span of like just a couple of days.
Yeah, it's honestly kind of confusing in how it all like panned out in terms of the timeline. First off, I've always been a proponent of this is the kid's decision. They're doing the best for their life. If they flip, they flip. Don't get mad at them. They're making the best decision for them. And then obviously, you come out with more details about this, and it almost made it seem like his initial commitment to South Carolina and the flip was intentional in a way. Beamer said, he said like 10 minutes after he committed to South Carolina initially, he got a call from somebody up in Maryland saying, hey, this is just kind of the beginning of some almost like elaborate scheme. Yes, he's committed to y'all, but come signing day, he plans to flip to Maryland. And then I think it was Beamer said the night before signing day, so Tuesday night, he was on the phone with Barham and his family talking about how great they were that they had found a home in South Carolina. And so Beamer said he was shocked and that it was kind of he said that's a story for another day. When it came out this morning that he had obviously flipped to Maryland and then committed. So kind of a whirlwind in terms of what exactly happened. But definitely not anything I ever saw coming, especially with the details of, the whole elaborate, he's going to commit to South Carolina and then intentionally flip. So I don't really know what the goal was with that, whether it was to make Maryland look like a better program or something. But I don't really know. And we don't really know all the details with that, but definitely interesting in how it played out.
Well, like Coach Beamer said, it is a story for another day, and maybe we will get more details in the future. But in sharing that story after he kind of talked about it, he held up the list of recruits and he said, these are the people we need right here. So he seems to be very happy with the signees from yesterday. And he spent a lot of time actually talking about his defensive back. So give me kind of the lowdown on what Coach Beamer said on them.
Yeah, I spent maybe 10, 15 minutes talking about that, position group specifically. And it's one that South Carolina was going to be kind of thin at. Obviously, Jalen Foster's entering his kind of last year of eligibility, has that upside with the NFL draft. It was already a thin group coming in with, when you had Israel Mukuamu leave, you had J.C. Horn leave, you had a lot of holes to fill, and it was a young group. So bringing in as many of those guys as possible is definitely something that could help the program. But you just mentioned about how they're all versatile. They're big playmakers. I was looking through. You've got a varying amount of size within the group. You got as big as 6'3", as small as like 5'11". So you've got a versatile group with the defensive backs coming in who are good at every little spot. I know somebody asked if they had really pinpointed where, if they'd be playing corner, safety, nickel, stuff like that. And, obviously it's too early to tell. And Beamer said that's something that you look at in the spring, but that he does know that the group of guys that signed today is they all have the potential to kind of play different positions in the secondary. It's something that they'll probably utilize come spring.
And Bieber not only talking about those defensive backs today, but also talking about some of those 2022 signees on the offensive side of the ball. He talked about quarterback commit Braden Davis. He said he's so excited about him. He talked about Landon Sampson, saying he'll be one of those guys by the end of his career where he catches like 1 million balls. And I think he quote said 1 million balls. And then he also talked about Ryan Brubaker, and something really interesting about him is he's actually a swimmer too. So kind of talk about that story that Beamer shared today on Ryan Brubaker.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. You don't really hear stories of offensive linemen being competitive swimmers at the same time. He basically told him that they were watching film on him, and he came in, and offense coordinator Satterfield had pulled up. He's like, "Come in, we're watching tape," and he comes in, and Beamer sits down, and they're watching a swim meet. They have no idea what he's watching, and then Sat goes, "That's who we're going after, the guy in the front of the pack." And of course, Beamer made a joke about how the last thing you expect as an offensive lineman to be a competitive swimmer, but it was definitely a funny story. And somebody with that kind of athleticism and upside at the O-line is definitely something you want on a team. But not just Brew, just the rest of the O-linemen. I think Beamer mentioned, you want somebody on the O-line that's tough and physical, and he said that in all three of those guys that are coming in from this class, that's exactly what they are.
And I think something really unique about Ryan is that he is so open about his love for South Carolina, right? Like you can tell all of these 2022 signees are very excited to come to South Carolina, very excited to play under head coach Shane Beamer. But Ryan is one of those guys on Twitter where I'm constantly seeing him posting. He's like hyping up his other teammates, getting really excited. So I think like when he's not playing football in season, maybe he can be like the leader of the student section for other games because he's just that into it. He's one of those names that really stands out to me. And I remember we were standing over at Gamecock Walk, I think during one of the last games of the season, and Coach Beamer's wife, Emily, was standing kind of near us. And I remember Ryan's mom coming up to her and talking to her and just talking about how excited Ryan was to come and how it felt like a family at South Carolina for him. So one of those players that definitely stands out, at least for me, in that 2022 class. Now, also speaking of new players coming in next year, I feel like it's the name that has been mentioned about 1 million times on the South Carolina beat over the past 3 or 4 days. Spencer Rattler, and then, of course, with him, you've got Austin Stogner from Oklahoma. Shane Beamer kind of talked about the story of how that came together today and those two commitments actually happened. So share that with us if you would, Michael.
Yeah, just to start off the story, it's funny, they had an open practice to the media on Monday. We got to watch the first couple minutes of it. And I remember just kind of sitting there joking, oh, Spencer Rattler's coming, the team will be saved, not really thinking it was going to happen. And then, of course, Monday night, the news broke. But Beamer talked about, after Stogner hit the portal, that he kind of made initial contact with him because he said that he has a picture hanging up in his office. Obviously, Beamer was the tight end coach at Oklahoma, so he coached Stogner directly. Said he still had that picture hanging up. So once he heard the news of him in the portal, he called him almost immediately, called his dad, talked with him. And then while, he was in the process of talking to Stogner, Stogner's dad basically said, "Hey, have you reached out to Rattler?" And Beamer was like, he kind of has his pick of the litter when it comes to schools. Spencer was obviously a preseason Heisman favorite, had done well in the games he played at Oklahoma. And so Beamer, I guess, was kind of like, we'll reach out, see what happens. But I think Stogner's dad played a huge role in South Carolina landing Spencer Rattler. I know Beamer said that Monday night when he got the phone call was from Stog's dad. And then he also had Stogner and Rattler on it when they both decided to commit. But I think just the Stogner family played a crucial role in getting Rattler to come. I know Spencer never came to Columbia, never had an in-person visit where, Beamer said they met with him online. over Zoom. And, he said that Stogner kind of told him everything he needed to know and wanted to hear about, the facilities, just Columbia in general. And I guess Stogner and his dad really sold Columbia, and not just, the area, but just the team and what Beamer's building here to Rattler. And I guess that was just kind of the final nail in the coffin for that decision. And then, as we all know, Monday night, South Carolina kind of broke the internet with both of those commitments coming in.
Well, we will insert Shane Beamer's clip right here, right now in the Roundup of what he had to say word for word on how it came to be with Spencer Rattler and Austin Stogner.
And then Stog had a great visit here with his mom and dad. While they were here on the visit, I believe it was his dad mentioned if you had any contact with Spencer. And I said, no. I mean, I figured Spencer kind of had his choice of schools of anywhere in the country and was looking to maybe get back closer to the West Coast since that's where he's from. And I said, Spencer knows I'm here, and I love Spencer, but I haven't, really pursued him. And he's like, well, you ought to talk to him. I think he may have some interest. And we connected, shortly thereafter. And I know there were rumors that Spencer visited here. Spencer did not visit here. I did not get on a plane and go to Arizona. Literally, it was some phone conversations, and we did one of those virtual visits where he had a chance to meet everybody in the program. Stog coming here on a visit and seeing how amazing this place is, what his influence on Spencer and what he told Spencer about this place. And that's one thing Spencer told me, because we were going to, I talked to Spencer about visiting, and he said, I don't need to. He's like, I know you and everything that Stog told me about the place, I don't need to come see it. I mean, Stog's that impressed with it. And we just continued to talk, and the Spencer's time frame for making a decision kept getting closer, quicker and quicker. At one point, it was going to be around Christmas time, and then it was going to be in a couple weeks, and then it was going to be in a couple days, and then a couple days turned into right now. And it was pretty cool. On Monday night, I got a call from Stog's dad, and I answered the phone, and Spencer's dad and Stog's dad were all on the call, and they told me they were coming, and had to step outside and scream, so I didn't scare anybody in my own house, but it was excited. But I think it's like I told our players, it's an opportunity to make our team better, and that's my job ultimately as the head coach, and also to bring in quality people into this program as well. And I know what Spence and Stog are about, and excited about them going forward.
You heard it right there from Shane Beamer, how he was able to get Spencer Rattler and Austin Stogner to come to South Carolina. Now, speaking, Michael, of South Carolina quarterbacks, yesterday some interesting information coming out. Jason Brown entering the transfer portal. So I guess a couple of questions kind of come with this news. The first one, I want to talk about what is happening in a couple of weeks with the Duke's Mayo Bowl, right? You only have a few quarterbacks on the roster right now if you're South Carolina. Connor Jordan entered the portal a couple of days ago as well. And the two quarterbacks that come to my mind that have the chance of starting in the Duke's Mayo Bowl against UNC on December 30th are Zeb Noland and Colton Gauthier. Coach Beamer said he doesn't even know who's taken the first snap yet in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Michael, hypothetically speaking, put your coaching hat on. If you are Coach Beamer, are you starting Zeb Noland, or are you taking the risk in starting Colton Gauthier?
Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of Colton Gauthier and his potential. But when it comes to just a pure coaching decision, I feel like the smartest decision is to start Zeb. Obviously, he has the most experience when it comes to playing college football in general. He started multiple games this season, got him wins. I think it would honestly be dumb to not start Zeb. Granted, I know you have to look to the future in some kind of way with, this being Zeb's last game ever as a player. If you want to look to the future, maybe throw Colton in there towards the end of the game, if kind of depending on how the game pans out. If something unfortunate happens and North Carolina ends up walloping South Carolina, then you put Colton in and let him get a taste of a bowl game. That way, he can kind of take that into next season. But when it comes to the guys who are going to start the game, I think the smartest move would be Zeb if you have a win in mind. If you're just kind of going out there, not to say that Colton couldn't help them win, if you're kind of going out there to develop younger guys, which I'm sure is a long-term goal too, then Colton should probably start. But if you're coming in where, you want to win a bowl game in your first year under Beamer, I think starting Zeb is probably the best decision.
So obviously with Jason being in the portal, he will not be playing in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And along with him, it's kind of been assumed that Zaquandre White and then JJ Enigbare will not be playing as well. Beamer hasn't said that. He said those players are going to have to make those announcements on their own. They have already said they're going to be focusing on the NFL draft, so kind of alluding to the fact that they won't play in the bowl game, even though it hasn't been said like point blank, word for word. But with that, you're losing one of your top defenders in JJ Enigbare. He's probably going to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL draft. You're losing your leading running back in Zaquandre White, who leads the team in yards per carry. And then you're losing your starting quarterback for the last third of the season. So for South Carolina, it's a couple of really tough losses in terms of players heading into this bowl game. If you're Shane Beamer, what kind of adjustments are you making heading into the bowl game to make sure those spots are filled as best as possible?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely spots that those guys it's going to hurt that they miss them. It is one game, but at the same time, obviously, JJ has huge upside with the NFL draft. I would be surprised if he's a second-round pick. He's kind of one of those late to mid first-round picks in my eyes, so he's obviously going to be missed on the defensive side. Zaquandre, like you said, was the leading rusher, but you got to remember they also have Kevin Harris, Marshawn Lloyd, and Juju McDowell. So I feel like, yes, Zaquandre is talented and has done a lot for the team, but I feel like in terms of who's going to be missed the most, it's probably going to be JJ because, Zeb has also played at the quarterback position. So, Jason leaving doesn't necessarily throw in a freshman automatically. You have Zeb as an option too. So I really think in terms of the three who are going to be missed the most, it's probably going to end up being JJ on the defensive end, but at the same time, not to say that those guys are replaceable, but all three positions have at least, one or two guys that are all talented who could step up and, make a difference in the bowl game.
Well, it is certainly going to be interesting. Of course, UNC getting that great news just about a week ago that Sam Howell is going to play in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, and then South Carolina just kind of on the opposite end of that feeling, knowing that three of their top players, especially from towards the end of the season, are not going to be playing in the bowl game. But Michael, I think that's going to do it for the Roundup this week. There was so much to round up in the sport of football. We just couldn't even get to any other sports, but I feel like we needed to do it. We just kind of needed to throw it all out there because between National Signing Day, between the transfer news, between the bowl game, between literally everything going on with Spencer Rattler and Austin Stogner, and then you have the late night Xavier Short commitment on Tuesday night right before National Signing Day. It's like all coming at one time, but that's what we love about the world of sports. We love it about the world of journalism. You're just constantly kept on your toes. But everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of the GC Roundup. Hopefully next week we are back to a semi-normal type of show for the GC Roundup. But Michael, you've done a phenomenal job. I've just so enjoyed having you on.
Thank you. I appreciate 2 opportunities to come on and get my face in front of those subscribers. But no, good work today, Kendall. Glad I got to come on. Thanks to everybody for subscribing to GC and watching these shows.
Yes, absolutely. Michael said it himself. Thank you so much, everybody, for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. Follow us on all of the social medias. We have so much content coming out there. Don't forget to follow our TikTok as well. I feel like that's a social media platform that many people forget about. But I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GC Roundup. He's Michael Sauls. I'm Kendall Smith, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.